Hello and welcome to Backstage with Gig Performer. My name is Brett Pontecorvo, and we are here every Thursday interviewing music makers who are using Gig Performer to power their live performance setups. And we are in for a massive treat today. We've got Borahm Lee coming in from Pretty Lights and Break Science, who's using Gig Performer in some ways that I believe are really innovative. But if you're watching right now, go ahead and let us know in the comments. Say hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you. Looks like we've got Harry coming in from Austria. Harry, thanks for being with us. We've got JC from Geneva, Switzerland. Hello, and as well we've got Glenn Short, and I see we've got Dave Bolden as well in the background there. So thank you all for being here. Before we jump into today's interview, I want to let you all know that next week we've got special guest Kwame Yeboah popping on. Kwame is keyboardist for Cat Stevens, Jamiroquai, and Craig David. He's doing some amazing stuff and really creating the sound of more than one person with just his keyboards, using Gig Performer to drive it all. So if you're around next week, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, that is definitely something you don't want to miss. But today we are here with Borahm Lee, and Borahm Lee is the keyboardist for Break Science. He's doing some really innovative things, performing electronic music with Gig Performer with multiple instances. And I know when we chat with him, he'll explain all of this. But buckle your seatbelts, because this is something we've certainly never seen on Backstage before. And so we're about to dive into it all. So without further ado, I want to welcome on today's special guest, Borahm Lee. How's it going, Borahm?
Going great. How's it going, Brett?
Good, man. It's an honor to have you here. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us.
It's completely my pleasure. Super stoked to be in the gig performer world.
Yeah, man, we're so glad to have you. I know I talked a little bit about who you are and what you do, but in your own words, Borahm, who are you and what are you doing professionally with Gig Performer and otherwise?
I'm a keyboard player, producer,
Mm-hmm.
sound designer. I have my own group, which started about 16, 17 years ago, Break Science, which is an electronic music duo, production and performance duo. And then I'm also the musical director and keyboard player for Pretty Lights live band, which is a nationally touring electronic music act
Yeah,
that has been around also for around the same amount of time.
yeah,
It's pretty much
yeah.
a start there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into all the context of it all. But for folks who are watching who don't listen to electronic music, what would you, if you had to define electronic music, what would you say it is? Like
It's
what?
a completely humongous umbrella. It's not necessarily techno. I think when people hear it, they think about dance music right away. But
Yeah.
people have been doing experimental electronic music since the 50s.
Mm,
And in a lot of ways, I consider hip hop music to be electronic, a type of electronic music as well,
yeah.
because they're using drum machines and stuff. So you know a sort of a fundamental definition might just be like using instruments and sounds that don't come from acoustic sources.
Yeah.
So but also different than like if you recorded a bunch of bird sounds and just played that back. I wouldn't call that electronic music. But then if you manipulated that using some kind of hardware, some machinery, then that would start to kind of get into electronic music, that just bird sounds that you record on a microphone, but you run it through some different things. And you have like I think some of the early stuff is people like messing with tape machines and manipulating them and stuff. So there is some blur of like, okay, is this electronic music? But then there's stuff where it's completely obvious that okay, this is electronic music that's made in the box person, which is made in the computer,
Yep.
and it's using all this digital stuff. So clearly it's computer music, it's electronic music.
Yes.
And you can make music on the computer that is completely fools you and thinks that you're listening to someone playing solo piano.
Yep.
Okay. And you can, at this point in time, you could prompt AI to generate that. So I don't know if you would call that electronic music because you're listening to some solo piano, but it actually is completely generated through microchips and stuff. So But it's a very, very big umbrella. So, if we kind of get back to the definition of it, it really encompasses so much.
Hmm.
Um, and then, but some common genres, there's drum and bass, there's house music, there's minimal, there's techno, there's down tempo, there's ambient electronic music. The list goes quite deep.
Yes.
And almost every week there's like a new genre
Yes.
popping up every month.
Yes. I was working with a student yesterday who asked to play a song, and I do a lot of ear training with folks, and he asked for, wish I could remember the artist's name. It was clearly electronic music, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, cool, we'll learn it." So I'm checking it out, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't in standard tuning. This is all I can't. These notes don't exist on the piano." But the moment you heard it, it was kind of like you were entrenched in some other world. It was almost like deeper than just one acoustic instrument. It was like all the sounds working together made so much of an experience that you didn't care that it wasn't tuned in 440. And you know, looking through your Pretty Light stuff and the Break Science stuff, something that I've noticed is it not only is it music, but it's also experiential. You're not just hearing the music when you go to see a Pretty Lights show. It's almost like you're in the music. It feels that way
That's
to
yeah,
me.
yeah.
It's completely immersive, which yeah, you don't see that in any show that you go, right? If you go to hear a jazz trio play, you're not necessarily going to get the lights are hitting you at the same time and the bass is shaking the floor, and it kind of pulls you in a special way.
You know, in defense of them, of the
Yeah,
jazz trio, they
yeah,
could be so nuanced and so incredible at what they do that you are immersed.
yeah,
But that something that reflects the times is that people need more to feel things nowadays.
sure,
In every regard, but like, so yes, the frequency and the bass shaking your brain inside your skull,
yeah,
and like it's like that's what people need. They're not. It's people aren't as patient and nuanced as they and patient in terms of like how they're absorbing it and listening and stuff. It's just the attention span, everything like that. So it's a reflection of the times.
yes,
Um, that being said, I think that is sort of new, you know, just coming from a jazz background and having studied piano for years and stuff, and very much appreciating that and still loving it. Um, that there's this sort of emergence of what moves the masses these days, and it used to be a little bit more, the chords, the melody, the song structure, the art of the song, and that stuff's all around. But now, what this is sort of more new emergent in the last, I would say, couple decades, is really the frequencies,
yeah,
the frequency, and like the power that can be tapped within the frequency, and how crazy that we can make the frequencies sound now and manipulate them now more than ever before.
yes,
And I play these shows with these kids, a lot of younger kids that are at the shows, and they they go crazy for it. Like it'll be atonal, it'll sound like a dentist drill, okay? And that's not my preferred thing, but it stimulates this younger generation in this way that like you wouldn't believe, you know.
yep,
They go absolutely bonkers hearing like this low sub bass and these high shrills and stuff, all in the right packaging. Um, and it's all about kind of these different producers, how they wield it, and yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it is. It's I think it was just important to lay down some of that context because what we're about to go into really fuels that. And I know you had mentioned when we were chatting and preparing, you actually started in hip hop, right? Like you did your jazz school, but then you were playing with Lauryn Hill and also Kanye West for a moment, and Modest Yahoo as well. Did I get that
Yeah,
right?
some reggae artists as well. Yeah.
Yep. And so when you were working there, um, you would still sort of consider that electronic. Is that true? In the
There's
hip
many
hop?
elements in hip hop and reggae music. They use samples, sample one shots, different sounds that are outside of the range of normal keyboard sounds.
Yes.
That the music called for. So I would have to, find those sounds and figure out how to perform them live.
Yes. And at the time you were doing that, were you like loading them into hardware? Were you early adopter of software music?
I was using Reason at first,
Okay.
and the Nord software too. I was using a Nord stage, which had the possibility to, play your own samples as well as playing my own samples from Reason, with a keyboard connected to it and
Mm-hmm.
triggering samples that way.
Yep. Yep. And for folks who are maybe thinking about sampling just in terms of like, you're about to get rid of your keyboard, you don't want to lose a patch. When you're talking about sampling, what are you talking about?
Um, Making my own sound, using a sample editor and cutting my own sound out of wherever I get it. You could take it off of a vinyl record, or you could sample yourself playing a chord, record it, and then edit it so it starts right, it's chopped right in the beginning and it ends right at the end. And then when you play one key, you actually play the whole chord
Mm-hmm.
that you play. That's one example of it. Or you could play a James Brown record, and in the middle of it, he does a drum breakdown, and you could cut those 16 bars and have it be played on one key on your keyboard while your other hand is playing some other keyboard. It expands the possibilities, but a sample can be anything that's recorded that you're just playing. It's a playback. A mellotron is a sampler, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A mellotron is a bunch of different tiny little, cassettes inside. So each key is playing a different tape spool.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so we're just forwarding that to modern times, and now that's being done by a computer or a,
Yes.
a memory bank inside the keyboard.
Yes. It can take
This guy, Leslie, so
an
young.
idea and breathe complete new life into it. Your 16th note drum break from a James Brown record can be used to create something totally new, completely different. It can you revitalize anything from, yeah, just takes one thing and turns it into another thing.
And what you've heard here in a lot, 80s music and stuff like that is playing that sample on different pitches.
Mm-hmm.
So you hear the like old 80s and it's very clear. It's like, okay, it's the same sample. They're just playing it up here now and playing it down here. And that became a whole aesthetic in itself.
Yes.
And then later on, we were able to figure out how to do that while the timing stays the same.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Um, so you were early days performing with Reason, and it wasn't until 2021 that Jason Starkey introduced you to Gig Performer. How did that even come up? Like, where were you and what were you doing where it was like, hey, check out Gig Performer?
This young guy is playing musical director, is nationally touring.
Oh, I think
Sorry about that. I think David was
might be the
unmuted.
boss's voice. It's God
But
coming
it's
from
all good.
above. Thank you, boss, for creating Gig Performer. So, um, I wasn't even looking for it, and Jason Starkey is the head tech in front of house for Pretty Lights, and he was working with Arcade Fire before, and we'd been working together for a couple years already, and he was like, "Hey, I think you might like this program. Check it out." And
Okay.
that's how it started. I wasn't like, "I need, there's something I'm looking for. Where is it?" It was introduced to me
Okay.
very fortunately, and then from there, but it's definitely been a long growing process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of
And
just
when you
familiarizing myself.
when you first got it and you're experimenting with it, was it like an immediate light bulb moment for you where you thought everything is about to change, or did it take you some time to get into it and understand what was going on?
I was blown away the possibilities that I could host all these plugins and not overload my computer. But as I kept using it, I was able to assimilate deeper and deeper into it, and it created more pathways and more possibilities.
Yep.
I was impressed right off the bat, but it kept going in terms of like, being able to understand what the possibilities are, and it's still happening to this day.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. What were you using at that point? Were you all in Ableton, or were you Ableton plus some hardware?
Ableton and hardware, yes.
Okay.
Ableton and hardware, yes.
Okay. And were you playing soft synths in Ableton, or was it your hardware that
No,
was the sounds and Ableton
I
playback?
was just playing everything live. Um, I was playing just synthesizers and some it's like a Farfisa or Rhodes, so some electro acoustic things, some vintage, stuff, and then a couple of more newer synthesizers. And in the beginning with the Pretty Lights, I wasn't doing you having Ableton as part of the rig, but with Break Science, Ableton's always been part of the rig, but that was more for certain track playback and stuff, and the keyboards would be on top.
Yeah.
In the beginning. So now with Gig Performer, I'm able to separate things more and then use MIDI clips to drive the different VST things, which we'll get into.
Cool. Okay, awesome. Well, should we transition into talking about your live setup? Are we ready to jump there? Cool. All right, let me bring this up on the screen. Sorry, there's an ambulance going by. I'm hoping that's not coming through. Do you want to play us a little bit so we understand what's happening before you talk about it?
So that's me playing. Let's talk about it for a second, maybe, and then I'll play it, and then we can. But I basically have 4 instances going. Right now, you're hearing this one, and that's the. I have them broken up into the different voices. So the first instance is all the way on the left, and that's my sub, sort of. Okay, and then I have the second one is that's more my top bass, I call it. And then my third here is my pads. And right here, you can't really see, but I'm using a Nord Stage 4 to trigger the sounds, to play the different sounds. And then I have a Melbourne Instruments roto control right here that I change the pages according to the different. And then my last GP voice is the lead. So
yeah,
I'm able to change preset sounds with the Nord.
Okay.
Then Ableton over here, all the way on the right. I have MIDI clips that are feeding into Gig Performer.
Got it.
So.
Yeah.
So I was playing the whole time with the latency because I was just listening to the laptop with the way we have it set up.
Got
But
it. Got it.
um, so it
I
was like a
wouldn't have
half a
known.
second. It's all good, but and that was just a little loop I made this morning for this thing. So the little just like a little drum loop I have, and then some different MIDI clips. The ones I had recorded, I had the bass sub MIDI clip, that little top bass MIDI
Yep.
clip, and then up the pad, and then I was playing sort of the lead live. I changed some different presets in my rack spaces for Gig Performer. Um, and as you heard, I was able to also get into the macros of the pads and disarm and arm some different effects on the different voices. Uh, and yeah, that was just a small sort of example of one of the ways that I use it.
Yes. Yeah.
In a
Uh,
very, very simple way.
yeah. It's yeah, honestly blowing my mind. So let's try and just like I guess this is even partially for me understanding signal flow here.
Sure.
Can you talk to me about what is going where and why? Like how is Ableton connected? How's your keyboard connected? And how to
I'm using a Mio XL, but I also do gigs where I don't use it.
okay,
But let's start by talking. I have the Mio XL, which is a MIDI interface,
okay,
and I have so Ableton is there's there's hardwired stuff with the Mio XL, then there's virtual. So I'm using the virtual routing the Oracle software, which is the Mio proprietary software, which is going to also be done without the Mio and the hardware using the IEC buses,
got it.
which I do extensively. Which when I play gigs that are smaller, that's what I do.
Okay,
But basically, using that busing, I have the Ableton routing here, and I have basically through the host routing, that's what it's called. I have these MIDI clips in Ableton that are sending out into the Mio XL host 7, which in turn, and then I set my sub instance of Gig Performer to receive. We go here to receive that
got it.
signal right here. So I have several MIDI racks feeding into this particular rack space. All the rack spaces are the same in terms of the wiring. So that's this one. This other one is getting my Nord here. So let's switch to there and hear it. Okay, so we're here in the sub instance right
Yep.
there, and then that you can see it lighting up there, the sub thing. But then if I play this clip, if I play this clip, you'll see the other thing lighting up. You know what I mean? So there's two different ways it could be fed in this particular instance. I'm also receiving program change here, as you can see, from my Nord. My Nord is able to output by just twisting this dial.
Okay. Nice.
Um,
So using that format then any of your clips could go to any of your sounds, is that correct?
well, this one it's all has specific pathways. So we're talking about my sub Gig Performer instance.
Yep.
So it's getting fed two ways. One is through the keyboard live, and the other is through the clips.
Got
Okay.
it.
Then my next track here in Ableton's, they're all like sort of symmetrical sort of with what's going on here. So the next one's the top bass, and it's the same situation, but it's going down a different pathway through the MIDI routing.
Yep.
And this again, this can be done. It's all in the same host in this example, the host number 7, but they're different MIDI channels. Okay, so I changed my patch on my Nord, and now I can, and now let me so now I can change, and now we're listening to. So now you're hearing the top bass.
Yep.
Change the patch,
Yep.
and yeah, that's pretty much how it's working. And it's the same situation where you have the keyboard feeding in from one, and then the Ableton's feeding another way. and just different MIDI channels, and you can have them all separate. And then, I'm also there's also a Launch Pad X here that
Yep.
right there, and I'm also able to change program changes on Gig Performer with that as well.
Got it.
Um, so one thing, like I could have a MIDI playing the same notes, but then I could cycle between different sounds if I wanted to.
Right. That's kind of what I was seeing there, where it's like every sound can be driven by a keyboard or a clip, and also you could change the sounds, that's kind of
Correct.
insane in terms of flexibility.
It also can be a cluster F or like very hairy. It could be very hairy and something to think about always conceptually is like are the options making your music better? And
Sure.
like
Sure.
are you able to handle is it something that's helping you or is it hindering you? There's always option paralysis,
Right.
So sort of like meeting that out and growing your palette with like what's serving you.
Hmm. Yes. Are you using clips to send program changes as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
In this right now with this session, I'm not just because I had a fresh session. So kind of once I get everything cemented, I'll do the other, But when we do the show, for sure.
Okay. And then I guess that just gives you like extra certainty that what you wanted to play is going to play.
100% certainty. Like
I
I
love
know
that.
that when I play this clip, I'm gonna get this sound.
Yes. Now you mentioned your musical director for Pretty Lights.
In a sense, it's very non-traditional, but I do handle lots of the musical duties and that is one of the sort of roles. But it's not like in a traditional sense of like if you're the Beyonce's musical director or
Sure.
something that it's very different. It's very non-traditional, this sort of format.
So how do you and Derek decide who plays what? Because you're both running tracks. So
Yeah, I'm more running MIDI clips that can be at the end of the day construed as a whole track. So we decide just like by rehearsing, and a lot of the times things are decided on the fly,
okay.
and we'll like have a track playing, but then it'll switch to the sort of the MIDI version of it.
Yep. Okay.
And it's important to point out that the main benefit of doing it this way or having this be a way that you do it is that you have flexibility to not only like change the sound like number one, the sound is better because it's not rendered. There's obviously risk involved because it's not all balanced like it's mastered, but I'm willing to take that risk for the possibilities that it opens up, being able to manipulate all the parameters of each sound. The clarity of the sound is greater, and then also the elasticity, like you can slow down and speed things up without it being like the artifacty thing when you do that with a track. Those are
Yes.
just some things that are beneficial for it, and it doesn't feel like the same old too. Like when you perform it like this, it's really different every time.
Yes.
It can be
So
different every time.
so why four instances? What does it give you that one instance wouldn't give you?
Yeah, I had other gig performer users tell me that you don't need to do that. You could do it all in one instance. One, advantage is that if one crashes, then you have three others. But also, I'm doing different program changes on all of them, you know, and then I have the separation like visually. I'm like you can see that, I'm separating I have different voices. So there's all the different MIDI channels. So it makes sense to me. I mean, maybe there's a better way that I eventually come upon, but this way just it seems to make sense to me right now.
Yeah. Yes.
The
Yes.
different all your different sounds, you know. So in a production standpoint, it's like if I go to show up to a session, I don't have to like sort of I know I just have my palette right there. I have all the sounds in front of me and all these different voices and they're all sort of separated and they also the audio routing is separated for the front of house. So, and I know that you can do that on one instance, but it's just like this layout and so being able to see it left to right rather than one long
Yes.
list.
It
That's
it
one
it,
plus.
it makes sense to me when I see your four instances, and I wondered, what your thought process behind it was. But yeah, this gives you so much separation. I guess it also gives you the ability to. Do you ever layer? Do you ever play two instances at once, or not usually?
I mean, all four instances are going at. I mean, you when the clip you were hearing, when I was playing it, you were hearing all four at the same time.
Well, there you go.
And amazingly enough, I mean, my desktop's pretty strong, but like even on a laptop that's just, even a few years old, it can handle it, which is so mind-blowing to me.
Mhm.
Because even running two different plugins at the same time on Ableton, it already starts to deteriorate the performance.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. I was noticing when you were playing, you do a lot of sound transformation, and in some
Sure.
of the conversations that I ha- have been having with you in the weeks and months since the first time we met, I've gotten the impression that you rely heavily on the macros inside of VSTs to create those transformations, and then you map the widgets to the macros in the VST. Is that true?
100%. Yeah, gig performer ability of customization to assign the different widgets, you know, in gig performer to the different the different modulations within each soft synth is it's so great. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's obviously endlessly customizable.
Mm-hmm.
So and then with this roto control thing, which is pretty
Yep.
amazing.
Yes.
If you can see here, if I switch the if I
Whoa.
switch the if I switch the sound, you can see these every rack space I switch, all these things the knobs are jumping on the motorized faders of it,
Wow.
which is a recent thing. So it's like I don't have to guess where the fader is when I go to this rack space, and it's all there. And I do save states for the rack spaces. So it's like, okay, when I open this, I want it to be here, I want it to be there.
Yes.
Um, yeah, completely like none of this is even close possible to in any other program or there's nothing that isn't even like sort of recreating it.
Yeah.
Like yeah, like main stage or using Ableton racks is like it's not even
Yes.
close in my.
Yes. I mean, I agree with you for sure. So, I guess, are you able to maybe show us a sound that you have a particular set of manipulations on, and talk about how you set that up? Um,
Sure. This is an arpeggiator. Spin one note,
yep.
and then let's open this up and see what's going on here. Yeah, so you
Whoa.
see
Okay.
two different ways to modulate the sound, and then there's a speed. So that in this instance, and then it's going. If I hit the edit thing here, oh, this zoom is in the way a little bit, so I'll move it over here. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
If I hit the edit here, and then I can hit this, and then you can see that these are assigned to these different parameters in analog lab in this
Yep.
case. Um, and yeah, and they're not always universally the same, but a lot of it is, which is nice and convenient.
Yep.
Uh, and that's just there's sort of one instance, and then over here I have my we'll go to like a more of a simple sound here. On my global, I have I have an instance of Portal, which is an effect VST. So if I turn it on, I can turn it on and off. But that's on my global, so all my rack spaces are feeding through that.
Got it.
Um, and then here's my gain and balance, which I control with my LCXL here,
Okay.
and that controls the universal. So for instance, on my top bass situation here, I have two two effects.
Got it.
So let's go to the top bass here. And then if I arm, so I can turn these on and off with my, I have it set to my roto control here, and
Yes.
then I turn them on and off, and then yeah, that's so that way I'm saving some CPU by not having a effect on every single rack space.
Yep.
It's just on the global, and then but then I have 40 rack spaces here, um, you know.
And I guess it gives you some continuity and effect as well, right? Like if they're all running through your effects plugins, then there's some cohesiveness to the way you're adjusting your sounds.
Yes. Yeah, there's some familiarity too, which kind of goes back to like where you want to have some repetition too, I think, and like
Yeah.
some that feel familiar, but while having enough variance.
Yeah. So what are your go-to audio effects? Like when you open up, was it Portal?
Yeah, I like Portal, but
And what are you
within
doing in it? Are they like Portal specific effects? Are they filters? Is it more than one effect or
the way I have it set up currently, it's always changing. It's just the arm and disarm, and then a percentage of dry wet. Because
got
like
it?
I kind of have it set. But sometimes I have like the speed of it if it's like sort of like a arpeggiating situation, or like if it's like sort of stuttering it.
Hmm.
There's that, and it's always sort of I'm always kind of changing it. Too. And this roto control has sort of made me approach it differently because before this I was using an Akai MPK 249,
Okay.
and that was cool. But now the key bed on the Nord Stage 4 and it just feels a lot better. So
Yes.
it feels like an upgrade to me.
Yes. And
With
and I guess also running everything through the global rack space, you also you were mentioning earlier there's some risk involved in using MIDI clips to drive your sounds because they're not mastered. So the volume could be too high, too low. So
sure.
having everything run through the global rack space also gives you the facility to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, this, the faders on this are all a set to the gain on the four different things, and then there's also a front of house engineer that also has it all separated, so he's also policing it.
Yes, absolutely. Now, something you were like driving home constantly when we chatted every time, subtly or directly, was, you're always trying, according to you, you're always trying to find the right sound for the situation. So when you go into preparing for these shows and you need to build new sounds, what is your process? Are you going through presets to find things that you like? Are you starting from scratch? Is it a mix of both?
Mix of both.
Okay.
I'm using Analog Labs, the Arturia stuff. I'm using the new Serum,
Yes.
Vital, and that's about those are kind of the voices I'm using um, at the moment.
Hmm.
And yeah, I just have like I've been collecting sounds for many years, and I'm always looking for new ones. Definitely making them from scratch. It takes more time. So sometimes I'll get like I'll find a new sound bank or go through Splice and be able to download some, or my friends and I pass some along to each other, find some on forums, and find it, and then tweak it a little bit, and then adjust it. If I find something I like, I'll kind of get it to where I want to make some adjustments, and then like the next step of it is cementing it to a rack space, which
Mm.
is basically like this like connection of how it's getting performed live, and then that's sort of really where the performance magic takes place. So like, so how am I gonna assign? And then like I sort of have a commonality between like usually I make my first, you call them widgets, right? Like
Yeah.
I just kind of think of them as macro,
Yep.
it's a macro widget. It's a knob. So I kind of try to make the first one be like the cutoff filter, usually the second one be the LFO in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll try to get universality there, like a sort of universal situation. And then I also got this old FCB 1010 MIDI foot controller, which is it's an old thing by Behringer, but it has two expression pedals. It's down under my desk now, but it has two expression pedals and 10 buttons. But basically, uh, I'm starting to assign the two expression pedals to different individual things on different sounds. So if I'm playing two hands, I still have the two different foot pedals to open and close different parameters.
Yes. Yes.
And
So
then another situation is somebody, in Pretty Lights, Derek also has a roto control that he can control things at my station. So I could be playing and he could open and close filters in my station. Yeah. And we
whoa.
have some, we have using RTP and different networking solutions. He's able to tap into my situation. And then I have another project, Harmonic Fusion with the visual designer. For Pretty Lights, his name's Anti-Alias, and we have a duo where when I turn a knob on the roto control, it's opening a filter, for example, in Gig Performer, but I'm also simultaneously sending that MIDI data to him on Touch Designer, and he's able to, it's able to have some kind of AV effect.
Whoa. Okay.
And
I
then
have to.
we get into like the whole. I know that there's a whole separate world that we can get into with Gig Performer with the with the OSC
y-
and that whole world, which I've touched a little bit on, but it's definitely pretty involved in common. But I know that that's another whole um, unexplored world for me that I'd like to tap into as well.
Um. Well, my mind is kind of blown a little bit. So you're saying Derek can tap into your setup, and I guess because you're using the roto control, your knobs are still in sync.
He was able to do it before using the Mio software. Like we
Okay.
were doing it with the Novation LCXLs before. Basically, he turns a knob there, and then that's going through the RTP, and that's going feeding into my Mio, and it's just basically convincing GP that the same signal is coming in.
Right.
So there's definitely some other layer of software that's helping to mask that signal to make it think that it's coming from the same place. So
What a
rather than
deep
having
level of trust. Right? There's
yeah,
like
there's some risk involved too. I mean, but it's fun to have the to have things, and I understand that, gig performer, a lot of people at this moment are, a lot of the users are coming from a place where like they have to, it's handy, the all-in-one keyboard is not doing it enough because they need more flexibility. They need to run, songs they have a tribute band, for instance, and they need like really specific patches and stuff. And so this is just sort of a digression from that, where it's like there's just so many ways that this can be used, but also you could be a one person show,
yes.
and you could everything, and instead of like running tracks and having it sort of be the same old every night, you can actually have that broken up into MIDI clips and be so it opens up, if you're willing to do the work and take the risk and maybe not have it be perfect at first in all these different ways, like there's so many opportunities and so much inspiration that Gig Performer can provide, you know,
Yes.
with these different setups.
Yes. Um wow. That's my mind is being blown in so many ways. Um okay.
And then another is like working alone and working with others.
Mm.
Like all this work can be cumulative. Like that's kind of where I'm at this point in my career. Like that, I've done all these different gigs, and I've spent so much time like learning music for this one, preparing for this one, and then it just doesn't get touched again. And then I do something completely different, which I got sick of that, and I was like, well, I want it all to be this sort of cumulative process. So as you get deeper in gig performing, like you learn more about it, and of course there is cumulative knowledge that's happening, but like I want it to be more direct and be like, okay, like I built this rack space, now I want to move it and use it for this next gig in whatever fashion. Maybe make some tweaks and continue to build my rig that's always ever changing. And then have
Yes.
some different saved sessions for different situations. But I always wanted to sort of be building upon, you know, where I'm coming from before, and having a gig performer be a part of my musical voice is like really changed. It changed, my trajectory so much to where it's just having Ableton and sort of or just playing keyboards, or having Ableton and playing on top with the keyboards, or maybe not having a part in there and playing that part. But now it's like I can take out whatever part I want. I can take out all the parts. I could have gig performer playing. I could play gig performer just live without any clips or some clips. It's everything and or but, like it's all, you can use it all.
Yes. Yes. And the thing, correct me if I'm wrong here, gig performer makes it so that you're not just dealing with collecting sounds or collecting ideas. There's a direct connection to how they're performed.
100%. Um, I I'm able to get all my sounds in one place and customize them and make them performable and expressible to the highest degree. One, I'm able to perform pre-recorded music or pre-recorded clips in a way that's more hi-fi and more malleable than ever before. Um, and I can do it to the simplest degree where I just have one rack space or two, or have 500, whatever, 250 of them. It's up to me
Right.
how I want to do that, how I want to assimilate that. So yeah, gig performer as me, and it's so rock solid.
Yeah.
Most of the only time it's ever crashed on me is because of a VST situation. It's not a gig performer, so it's so well made. Thank you, Mr. Jameson, for making it again. What's your Venmo? I really feel like I owe you more than this interview, but I do have a wish list too, but it's very short actually, and every
All
time you
right,
guys
David
come
is trying to come in. Hold on here. Oh, that's the wrong one. Oh, Dave B, you're on here too. Hold on, I could pull you out. Sorry. All right, you're in, David.
Sorry, what's your Venmo account number, please?
But I mean,
But by the way, just to be clear, the Gig Performer project was started by two people. It was myself and my development partner Naboja Jogo, who very sadly died 2 years ago at the young age of 52.
Mm.
More than 2 years, and 2.5 years now. Very, very sad. And he was a guitarist, and so we were coming from it from a keyboard, my approach and his approach as a guitarist, and it's ended up working for both. This project would not have happened without him, and even though he's gone, I still refer to myself as a co-founder because we're not forgetting about Naboja. I have wonderful new people involved in the project now, and they've got expertise and they're bringing all sorts of stuff
Yeah.
to new things that we're doing. But I wanted to be clear, it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
thank you so much for
Yeah.
giving us that information. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
Yeah. Right.
It's on the about page, but
Yeah.
it really was the first one and the first few, really up until the beginning of Geek Performer 4 were both of us. And he did all the audio engine, much of the GUI and so on. I did the system stuff and the OSC and the language.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so it was a very good partnership. But yeah,
Yes.
it wouldn't have happened without him. So
Yes.
just wanted
Yep.
to make that
Absolutely.
clear.
Thanks
And
again.
wait, give me your Venmo account number.
Oh gosh. So I guess one of my questions is you love like this aggregation collection of sounds. How are you saving them? Are you exporting your rack spaces? Do you have a master gig? Are you saving presets in the VSTs?
I found it's very helpful to save it in the VSTs first.
Yep.
So a lot of the VSTs now, they all have playlists and stuff like that. So you get it in there. And then I've definitely Dropbox is a major because I'm going between different computers. So That still has I still have to do work there, but because the playlist within your one computer is not carrying over to cloud, and that's something that like it's got to something that's definitely got to happen. So I would love for like there to be some kind of cloud situation with Gig
Mm.
Performer
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
eventually. I don't know how exactly to wrap my head like how that would work, but basically I use Dropbox to like where like I have some stuff. So when I'm on my lap, I do a lot of my work on my desktop, but then when I take my laptop out, I want, to be able to access those things. But once they're set up in my, save my sounds in carefully curated playlists within the VST. So Arturia Analog Labs has a really great, you know, um, system for that, and the way that you can organize your presets. So then once it's there, I just open a rack space, but I'm not as much saving individual rack spaces because the wiring is different and stuff, and,
Got it.
and so. But what I'll do is I'll just duplicate the rack space that's there
Mm-hmm.
because it's all got all the wiring I need. And then I'll put the new preset in, and then I'll get the macros where I want it to. And and then the last step is I have to adjust it. So I have to, a big part of my thing is this page, which is copy current, which is the initial value on gig load.
Yes.
They're all different. And so then I'd love to be able to highlight all of this and just do a one click, you know. I don't know if you're seeing it. Yeah.
Yep.
But right now it's only 8 now. So right now I click one and I just hit copy current, hit the next one, hit copy current. So I get the macros to where I want. I want to make sure that first of all that this is assigned to what I want it to be in my plugin.
Yep.
And it's pretty universal. So it's like if I have a new serum patch, it's already usually set up to the 8 macros in serum, so I don't have to mess with that. I
Yep.
just duplicated that rack space, and then I just have to get these knobs to where I want it, try to get the volume where I want it, and then um save the name, and then hit save, and then it's saved to the session.
Yep.
That's usually my process there. So it's like, yeah, like if I have if I have this, and then I'll that's a vital patch, so I'll just hit Command Shift D. I get another version of that, another one, and then I'll go to the wiring, I'll open it up, and I'll go to the next one. Different sound. I'll get the thing, and then I'll rename it here. I'll rename it the rack space, and then it's pretty much done.
Yes.
You know,
Are you using GP user presets or favorites at all?
no.
Okay.
I mean, I know that there's so much stuff about GP I'm not tapping
Sure.
into yet. So, but using it for my live purposes, it's mostly used. I'm mainly using it for performance, but I'm now slowly starting to integrate it into my home production,
Yes.
having it up to where like, okay, when I produce a new song, a new beat, all my sounds are here, and then it's like, so trying to make the marriage of the two getting closer.
Yeah, GP user presets for you I think are going to be I think you're going to like them. Anyway, that's for another time, but I'm watching you and I'm like we got to get you on those. I love that. Man, I also have to say I love that you don't make anything complicated. Like every single one of your rack spaces sounds insanely good, and it is 2 MIDI in blocks, 1 VST, and a global rack space.
Yeah.
Every
But
time.
then having 4 instances and like 30 different rack spaces is a level of complexity. It's already like a lot going on here. So I'm trying to, yeah, and then like the new serum has 8 macros instead of 4.
Nice. Are you loving Serum 2? I haven't upgraded at all. Is
Yeah,
it?
it's really great.
Okay.
Really great. Really amazing, really clear, clear 3D and powerful sounding. It's
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So you're using all 8 macros in Serum 2.
yeah, well, the new serum, now the sounds you can, yeah, they have 8. So I'm getting there. Each sound takes some massaging, finessing.
Mm-hmm.
You spend time with it and figuring out how to express it. I think like one of the bottom line things here is just like the expressivity, like
Yes.
how, because if you didn't want to express, then you would just hit play and just let it happen the same way. But because we have this desire to express things and find the expression,
Yes.
so within each sound there's like these different ways that you want to express it,
Yes.
and when you play, and Gig Performer provides so many lanes and so many possibilities for you to get in there and be able to
Yes.
express it.
Are you using pigments at all? I hear
Yes.
people like oftentimes will be like, oh, serum or pigments, serum or pigments. Um,
Both.
yeah, right. Do you have a go-to when you're reaching for a particular thing? Do you end up in a serum or pigments
So
based off what you're looking for? Or it depends a lot.
analog labs, is all the Arteria stuff, if you know,
Yep,
right? So
yep,
houses all, but within that, definitely, pigments is definitely a big part of that.
yep.
Let me see here if this is so yeah, like it's just a big part of it. But I'm using all the different analog lab stuff.
Got it, got it,
Pigments is one of the voices within analog labs that I'm using.
got it, got it. We're almost at time here, so I just want to let anybody who's watching know if you have any questions for Borahm, you want him to
Yeah, please.
answer, gig performer or his process or otherwise, go ahead and pop them in the chat. I'm sure he'd love to answer them, and we'll go from there. But I guess my question for you is, when you sit down to create what very much is an environment, are you
Yeah,
working
that's what I like to call it too, is an environment,
yeah,
or it's like a zone. I call it a zone too. Like create these different zones. So every different time I launch a scene in Ableton with the clips, they all have program changes, and then all the program changes will switch. So all the sounds in Gig Performer will switch, and it'll be a new environment.
yes,
It'll be like completely new, like not like, oh, it still sounds like he's playing the B3 and the Nord piano,
right,
just a different set of chord changes. Like it ain't
yes,
that's not the party anymore. Okay, we're at a new party. This is 2025, so
right,
not that there's anything wrong with that, with playing that. And if you're killing it playing that, and you're and just keep doing that,
yeah,
But this is expanded the, it's like I think that's sort of an important thing to talk about, is that I I come from a jazz piano background, and of course, I worked hard at it, and I'm inspired by other people, and then and other times it could be discouraging because you're like, oh well, I'm not at this level I want to be at, or I'm not as good as these other players, and I don't have what it takes, and I also feel something lacking in terms of like what I want to express, and my taste, my aesthetics aren't quite encompassed by this medium, this genre, these instruments. Okay. So we're in a time where it's like we have access to all that, but we have access to so much more. And now with Gig Performer, you can really get into your own voice
mm-hmm.
and be like, okay, I want a little bit of some tradition. I want to play Little Rose, but I also want some of these other sounds. I want to play it like this. I want to customize like this. And you can make it so you don't sound like anybody else.
Yeah,
Like you can get to that point where it's like you might be the most killing bebop piano player, but it's like, oh, you kind of sound like this, and you kind of like, and that's cool. That's fine. That's beautiful. Like I think that's an amazing thing. But also understand that like there's this whole other world out there for you. So like if your career is not launching it quite as you want it, or just like musically taste wise, like you want more, you're looking for something more, like it's out there,
yeah,
you know.
yes, absolutely. I feel like there are musicians who need to hear that, because it's a ruthless field, and this does kind of give you uh, some potential to create something that is new and your own. Um, what is a typical preparation session like if you're going to get ready for a show? Like, are you sitting down and spending most of your time with the sounds, or are you dealing with the integration between the programs? Like, let me
It
rephrase that
really
question.
depends on the show. The Pretty Lights preparation is never ending. It's
Okay.
like it's so massive and deep, and it takes so much time, and when we get to the show, it's never complete. Like we have new stuff, but like there's also stuff like, oh, like during the show, I'm like, okay, like, I gotta work this out, and it's ever changing, and there's always new sounds being added because that's sort of the MO of it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I play another project called the Butterfly Quintet,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no tracks running. It's just me playing a Rose. If there's a piano, they'll play a piano, but I do bring Gig Performer out, and I'll have about maybe 12 to 15 rack spaces, which are changing, a couple of tasty pads, No bass. There's a bass player playing, so basically a bunch of tasty pads, bunch of tasty leads, and then maybe two sample racks. When I say sample racks, like I'll have like little cutout pieces of like a Stevie Wonder vocal or something like that that I'm like triggering live,
Mm-hmm.
or like another. So if I play like a gig like that, it's just like I want to make the sound palette so like maybe we have a new tune, so I'll get a couple of the new sounds in there for the new racks that don't exist on my Nord or aren't on the Prophet I'm bringing to the gig.
Yes.
And it's always different gig gear at the gig too, like what's available for the backline. That's why gig performer another it can get your back. Like, okay, they don't have the usual Prophet that I can backline. Let me get a couple of sounds on deck in GP that can cover for me.
Yes.
It's
And
such a great cover. It's just like can get your back in so many ways.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
then if you integrate it with Ableton, like you can, if hey, the bass player can't make it, we got it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's kind of, or we don't have the budget for a guitar player or a singer.
You're fine.
I mean, it's kind of, and then you throw the stem separation stuff in there, and it's just like say your horn section can't make it to the gig. You only have a two track from the album. You use the stem separation to separate the horns. If you can get a passable take, you put the horns into Ableton. You trigger that out. And then and the bass player can't make it. And then you're playing bass with the left hand using the gig performer, racks, and the right hand you're playing or whatever. There's so many different configurations that you can have, um, and hats you can wear.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't just have to be a keyboard player either. You can be the saxophone player and be doing all this.
Right. What does practice look like for you?
I mean, I wish I was just sitting at the piano practicing, but unfortunately, I'm sitting in front of the screen. I should probably get blue blocker. Someone told me it's all right after the sun sets. I'm not supposed to get the blue light.
Yes. But like
Yeah,
like you being able to pull this off like requires, I assume, some degree of muscle memory.
I mean, it's like a lot of years of sound collection, of programming, of customization, of understanding the software, understanding what the gig entails, understanding like what gear is practical to bring out, how much time do I have to set up, is my computer going to be able to handle this, am I pushing it too much, like the practicality and the risk weighing in involvement with like the trade-offs and like
Mhm.
what accessing it, being able to getting a wrangle and the familiarity
Mhm.
of all the things.
Mhm. Yeah. So you're not as much practicing the implementation as much as you are spending time in the preparation of what you can output. It
It
seems.
definitely is practicing implementation too.
Okay.
Definitely practicing implementation too.
Okay.
It's just kind of a balance of all those things.
Yeah.
A lot
Absolutely.
of people, a lot of people don't even notice that like you have all this going on. They're like they just get the sound at the end of the day, which you have to, which needs to be considered.
Yes.
It's like, okay, how does it sound at the end of the day? How well am I performing it? Is it
Yes.
better if I just bring my my Korg Triton out and just leave GP at home tonight? Maybe it is.
Yep. Yep. And it's a worthwhile question. And to some degree, you're doing it correctly when people don't know how epic your setup is. Right? Like you got to build what you have to build, but if the output is landing and people are resonating with it, then you did your job.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
I love geeking out here with you talking about it. And I just want to be able to give back and grow the community.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's some questions.
Yeah. So this is from Harry
Great,
Trendle.
great question.
Have you ever worked on a solution to realize everything in Gig Performer without Ableton? What were the problems, and why are you solving it this way now?
I started from Ableton, so I haven't tried to do everything in Gig Performer, but definitely my mind has thought about that. But with the integrated systems with the other and the bands that we share files with Ableton, definitely have to keep using Ableton. But I definitely am, being able to please provide insight if you have any, Mr. Trindle, Harry, like because if there was a way that I could trigger the clips, trigger MIDI clips, and save MIDI clips in Gig Performer and just use Gig Performer, I'd love to know how to do that. The new Serum 2, each instance of Serum 2, you can save up to 12 MIDI clips inside the preset, which is mind blowing.
Yep.
So the Serum 2 is like a mini DAW. And inside of it, I could send, and the MIDI clips can be as long as you want them to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like each preset, so like in that way, I could there, that is a possible problem. If I was using all Serum, which is totally possible,
Mm-hmm.
I could run the whole show on Serum, and within each Serum patch, I could have the MIDI clip I need to, and then when I go to the next song, it could be the next
Yeah,
patch.
we have a MIDI file player. Did you know that?
I didn't. I
Yeah.
didn't. I haven't,
Yeah.
and yeah. So I totally would be open to trying to do it that way. I'm sure it would bring down the latency, but the visual aspect, as you can see with Ableton,
Yep.
and the visual organization is definitely
Mm-hmm.
very clear, and
Yep.
the navigation. So I'm highly doubtful that I'm going to replace Ableton.
Yep. Well, it
And
also
I'm
sounds
also
like it's part of your integration with the other people.
exactly, and that's but always learn how to, my jazz piano teacher taught me always try to come to the same answer as in as many ways as possible.
Yep.
It's called the multi-directional approach.
Yes.
So how many ways can I solve this problem? The more ways that I can understand to solve this problem, the smarter I'm going to be, and the more comprehensively I will understand it. So definitely, Harry, thanks for asking me that, and me knowing, even if I don't use it,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there are these other pathways,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, the MIDI file player is pretty cool. There's also, we'll spend too much time here, but MIDI file player also has a way you can tap through a MIDI file. So instead of having it triggered to the clock, you can have two keys and alternate between the keys. And depending on how quickly you alternate between the keys, the speed of the playback of the MIDI file will change, rather than just
Oh,
playing it back to the clock.
wow.
Anyway,
That's
Boundless
really cool.
Euphoria, I think, just wanted to say thank you. This is far more advanced than my ability to fully comprehend, but I respect you constantly expanding your creative energy and knowledge for us.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Euphoria.
Yeah. Well, dude,
A lot of this wouldn't be possible without gig performers, so.
It's awesome. I always wrap up interviews with the same question, and I always think I should probably start putting this in the email so people are prepared to answer. But if you had to give one new user, somebody's brand new to gig performer, they want to get started using it, you were going to give them some words of wisdom to get started on the right foot with gig performer, what would you tell them?
I would definitely say like start with one rack space and just see and your favorite VST that you're the most familiar with and see how customized you can get it. That doesn't mean making a gajillion knobs widgets.
Mm-hmm.
That just means like how well is it at the end product is like how you wield it and like and what it sounds like and how much it opens up your creativity and the your palette, your level of expression. So creating that bridge between assigning these things to a MIDI controller and then like being able to perform it. So start with one rack space, one sound, and then see how much it opens up your performance by assigning all these different things. Experiment with it, and then like see how close it is to your keyboard or whatever it is, or and like that's gonna inspire you. Start there rather than starting with like, okay, I need to put 500 sounds in this instance. Just start with one and just see like how dope you can make it.
Yeah. Man, that's I love that answer. That's like go deep instead of wide, right? It's like go as deep as you can.
Be practical. Be practical and like, you know, because like what it looks like on paper is not when you're at the bandstand or when you're just creating, like not even thinking about the venue, but just like you're creating, you're playing, like you're performing. It's called gig performer, okay? Performer. Okay, so your performance,
Yes.
there's a difference between, I always try to tell people there's a difference between a performance and a presentation. Okay.
That's
So
good.
you're performing it. So expression, performance, very, very much intertwined.
Yeah.
Okay. A great performance is very expressive.
Yes.
Okay. A lot of the time.
Yeah.
So gig performer gives us the ability to really customize how we express.
Yes. Yes. Man, that's great. That's some wisdom there. And I think, inadvertently that is music, right? Like this emphasis on the depth of expression and just the way everything is kind of packaged together. Like that is the music, whether you're playing bebop or you're playing electronic music or you're playing hip hop. The performance is like the culmination of all of the attention to detail that makes it something greater than a bunch of organized sounds.
And then also like jazz music, like you do all the learning and you do all the studying and practicing, but then you forget it. You want to forget about it when you're there, and you want to just like let go and
Yes.
play.
Yes, absolutely.
Some of that too. But I had a great time today. Thanks so much, Brett, and
Yeah.
everybody else on the GP team. I really look forward to building more together
Yeah.
and also like getting stronger as a community and sharing
Yes.
all the tips and tricks and scripts and all that stuff.
Yeah, man. Well, it's been an honor to chat with you. Thank you so much for being with us. And folks who are watching, next week we'll be back with Kwame Yeboah, which is another one you definitely don't want to miss. So we'll see you all next week. And again, Borahm, thank you so much.